Welcome again to Write Once, Read Many. This time covering chapter 30.2 from Arc 30 Speck. Okay. There may be a slight echo on the song, but hopefully it's not noticeable. Hey Greg, hey Vic. Oh yes, I'll go to the final art. These speed draws are so quick on these ones that I keep Oh, Vic says it sounds fine. Okay, that works. I thought that the Bluetooth thing was connected for the little earbud, but instead it just started playing out of the laptop, so I was like, whatever, I'm not gonna stop for this. Another great art. This time we see Taylor at the laptop with Dragon moving her hair out of her face. I talked to Vic about this chapter in the last few days, and it was funny because she was talking about making the art and was like, this chapter was so long, there were so many different scenes, and yeah, she was right. But yeah, the audience participation reminder, before I forget and skip past it, was, are there any capes you think would be a direct detriment to fighting Scion? And then for themes, there's like regret, leaning into like doing the thing you know no one wants and is like, air quotes, monstrous. Not that I'm like saying her actions are great or defending Taylor's whatever specifically, but she does use the word monster all the time. Also, you may hear noises from the dog in the background, who is so far quiet but seems to be ramping up in noise level. So she has a new hobby of rubbing her face on a blanket and then just barking into the blanket. I don't know if it's fun for her because she's deaf now, but it's sure one of her new hobbies. Anyway. I may have to kick her out of the room. Alright, sorry for getting so distracted. So yeah, I'm just a second. I'm gonna have to figure something out here. Okay, I'm not sure how I'm gonna handle this. She's really like, whenever I'm not looking over at her, making a bunch of noise and trying to get my attention. We'll try to move on and see what happens. So, yeah, Taylor, loss of control themes continue. Slow slide of, you know, her mental state, etc. But, yeah. I'm going to hop into the 30.2 chapter summary. Taylor left the makeshift hospital area at the end of last chapter, and we open this time on her approaching the ongoing fighting with Scion. Lots of the capes are in full retreat, Nilbog creatures in dragon suits are sort of bulking out their numbers a bit because there are so few people left on this battlefield, I guess. And there are, I guess I shouldn't say so few because there's still only like 20% of the numbers, so there must be loads and loads of people here. But there are different like groups arriving through doormaker portals onto the battlefield. Taylor's doing a lot of thinking about like the scale of Scion and how they can't defend from his attacks and can't visibly hurt him. That'll be going on like a lot, and I'm, yada yadaing it a bit, but she's like using this to connect back to why so many of the capes are trying to escape and all. And so Scion's kind of on screen for real now. He's center of attention. He's lasering a whole group, then like one by one, anyone who can withstand it, he just like ultra kills them. Chevalier intervenes directly, saving a few of the people who hadn't been taken out yet. And seemingly both Taylor and Scion are surprised when Chevalier's sword can't be like just broken immediately. It can both like stop Scion's attacks and chop him. He's probably using like the leftover behemoth pieces in his sword while Ingenue alters her power. She's like on the battlefield there with him. And even being cut in half doesn't really slow Scion down that much, though. He's able to keep himself together like when the Siberian was like intersecting his body before. And at least Chevalier is able to distract him, and then he sort of action jumps away with his sword. He can do a thing that we see happen at least once in a scene in Ward, but he basically like extends his sword to fling himself backward, then like unextends it in midair, re-extends it, and then like chops it into the ground to like stop his momentum. It's pretty cool. It's very video gamey, but he does it. I had this quote here: "Scion's a ghost. It's a mask." And this is when there's another moment, like in the last chapter, where Taylor's passenger is feeding her information using memories. She thinks of Scion as a force of nature, but then gets encouragement or defiance, hearing herself yell, "I'm not giving up!" Which gets a follow-up, "Damn straight." Which, like, a lot of these lines are from previous Taylor lines, but the "damn straight" thing, the only time I could think of when someone says that is Imp saying it, although she does say it 2 chapters in a row, which is kind of funny. It's like 28.2 and 28.3. But it did kind of feel like whenever the Undersiders were getting back on track and showing people, like, yeah, we never give up, then that's what Imp would say. Chevalier is still blocking beams with his sword and fires the cannon blade to buy time for people to run away. It might be the memories she's feeling or seeing Chevalier do his thing, but she steels herself to start using her new power to get into the fight and accepts that there will be consequences later. Thinking she's a monster, she ties it back to how she felt before she ever went out in costume, then flashes back to classic line, "The hell am I supposed to do?" With, and that's from the very first chapter. I'm sure most readers recognize that, at least in the back of their mind. And then another quote here, "Had that anger ever really gone away?" It felt to me when I read that "had that anger ever really gone away," like in the Cody chapter at the end of Arc 23, when he's like, "I could hear the Seamerg singing. Did it ever go away? Was it just going on the whole time?" And he sort of realizes. Up until this point, Taylor had been floating around in the air, but now she drops to the ground, and it's not very graceful, so she falls over on landing. Stuff like that just happens to her all the time now. She's got 7 capes under her control and starts to feel their like fear and emotions instead of focusing on figuring out what their power is. It's like overwhelming and distracting. There's a bonsai gardener themed tinker who's floating around on a platform. Various memories flow through Taylor's mind to let her know how the capes each individually feel, all various forms of trapped from her memories earlier in the story. And several of the capes see her with the same kind of hate she felt for Mannequin right after he had attacked her territory and killed some of her people. These like emotional and memory inputs are frustrating Taylor because they're so distracting, and she's having trouble deciphering the powers that she's working with. When trying to tap into Tinker powers or extrasensory power things, and such, it seems like she has a harder time for her than with more direct effects. Even controlling the bodies of the people in her swarm isn't really working out yet. She says it's like relearning how to use her body when she got it rebuilt, or like I sort of felt like it was how in the early story she was testing the waters with her power to see what she could do, and she couldn't do like a bunch of the complex bug tasks yet until at least like arc 5. And then, rudely interrupting Taylor while she's trying to get a handle on things. Acid Bath is laughing because he thinks she's going to just use these people as human shields and let them die. Being misunderstood in this way infuriates Taylor, but she can't respond to change the narrative. While she will admit she's using them to fight against their will, she at least sees herself as having a noble purpose rather than Acid Bath, who's one of like those cruelty personified style capes. And spurred into action by her antipathy to Acid Bath, Taylor sets her minions to fighting more by instinct and with broader commands, rather than trying to micromanage them. This reminds me, again, of how Alec operated during his interlude, getting better results by letting muscle memory and such take over for Sophia while she's fighting. There are more flashes of insight for Taylor, realizing certain powers are easier to learn and control than others, setting aside some of the more esoteric options for now. Testing power combos and such, she gets some attacks going and learns how to use a teleportation cape's power that she has. Scion's focus has been mainly on Chevalier while all this has been happening. Pretender as Alexandria and another similar like flying brute come in to distract him for a bit. Although Scion bonks Chevalier away, even after they're trying to hold him. Acid Bath fights Scion for a moment. I'm not sure how much damage or anything he does, but he's distracting and he sort of like sloshes around the battlefield and like throws punches of like flung acid and stuff to hit Scion. And Taylor feels the fear of the minions she's controlling and realizes she's paralyzed by their fear. Shaking this off, she continues her attacks into the general fray, hoping that her small but seemingly resilient group will inspire others to keep fighting. Even after being released from Taylor's hold, one of the capes she was controlling begrudgingly joins the fight as she'd intended. He's like tough enough to directly fight Scion, so she sends him in by like moving him out of her range toward the fight. Taylor focuses on the bonsai tinker again and starts figuring out how to relay the information about devices and settings and stuff to herself by relating it through ways she's been hurt before, like poison, incendiary, blinding, healing, and then when she comes upon this like healing effect, She releases a cloud of alien technology-driven pollen into the air, which disperses like coagulants and painkillers into the injured capes on the battlefield. And prepping the teleporter to move the group again, because the teleporter has to like set up a circle around whatever she's teleporting. Taylor looks back to her like direct attackers that she's had going, and they seem to have started using combo moves without her trying because they're already like teammates, as far as she can tell, based on costumes, with like an established rapport. So they just sort of make it work. Scion turns his attention to them and is about to start blasting, but Taylor completes the teleport circle, and she's not able to take everyone with her. She like has the Tinker flee one direction, and like some of the others just stay. But the escape was successful, and after the teleport went off, Scion doesn't pursue them or even kill off the people she left behind. Unbeknownst to Taylor, though, this teleport lands her next to Glace who greets her here and starts giving her advice about her new capabilities, etc. She tells her that she'll need to practice, and warns against trying to control like Glastig or her flock. Taylor nods to agree that she won't try. But Glastig is worried now that they're losing too much and things are hopeless for her goal of finding a counterpart for Scion to continue the cycle. While listening to Glastig, Taylor realizes one of the weird powers she couldn't figure out might be good for healing, and then she teleports that guy to a bunch of unconscious capes elsewhere. And Glastig is impressed with her figuring out where the guy needed to be in the fight. Scion does a big blast thingy into the ground that ripples through and knocks a bunch of stuff down, including like buildings. Leviathan appears out of the water, walks over to confront Scion. The conversation continues between Glastig, who invites Taylor to stay together. So that she can help Taylor develop her powers under Glastig's guidance. Taylor refuses this, and Glastig is able to figure out that this is because Taylor has some plan that she wants to enact. Glastig says that she'll be waiting for when Taylor returns so they can have one last stand together against Scion. She like lives for this shit. She's just like, I'm not gonna pretend. I love getting in giant super fights at the end of time. Just as Taylor's about to teleport away, Glastig stops her for one last moment and lets her know she needs to find something to anchor herself to as she gains power. I've got another quote here. When all is said and done, you will either be dead, and this thing will be a comfort to you in your last moments, or you will be powerful, and it will be all you have left. And then Taylor thinks to herself, I've already decided what that is, I thought, since a long time ago. But she doesn't tell us, the readers. Damn you, Taylor. Closing the circuit for the teleport, Taylor's moved from the battle right as Leviathan crashes into Scion. Taylor has a flashback to leaving the Undersiders at the end of Arc 22 to become a hero. She's mad at her passenger for this. She's like, damn you, making this as hard as possible. But now Taylor's heading for Dragon to get information. And when she's confronted by DT soldiers, she moves toward them, and then as she's able to control them, the memories she feels have to do with like surprise attacks and stuff. Like, oh no, she got my ass, as they realize they're being controlled. And then this is the part that confirms she can control like non-parahuman humans. They just didn't cite it in the wiki, and I hadn't reread the whole arc when I was writing for the previous chapter. Knocking politely on the door to the Pendragon. Taylor is able to calm some of the officers for a moment, but they're still demanding Taylor like states her identity and a password as part of Master Stranger protocols. She's all thinking to herself like, "Is that because of me? Did I do that?" But despite her "did I do that" ing, I think the truth is that it's because of Teacher and fucking Satyr most of all. With Teacher dressed as a damn wizard. Taylor's worried that they'll get like shot if she tries to teleport again, and she doesn't have like a swarm with her. I believe it's just Taylor and the teleporter. And then she sort of realizes that they're so covered in a big cloud of bugs that no one's going to be able to see them drawing the circle, so she just goes for it. And she gets into the Pendragon. She wasn't even sure if they could go into places that the teleporter couldn't see. But then we get, "Weaver, I was just about to step outside. Tattletale filled me in, asked me to pass on the details. A lot of people are worried here on quite a few different levels." Taylor indicates she needs to use a laptop. Dragon agrees. "Tattletale was saying you were unfocused. I'm not getting that sense. You're up to something." And quite right, Dragon is. Alright, I'm going to attempt again to scoop the dog, so maybe she'll stop freaking out. Scoop. Okay. She's going to sit in my lap for now, so you may hear her heavy, creepy Boston Terrier breathing. Once Taylor's looking at the computer screen, she realizes that she can't understand English anymore. This is like a devastating blow to her, and she thinks back to her mother and all the things reading got her through. And she even thinks about like learning to read Braille to read on stakeouts with bugs. Bug Braille. Vic says, "Creepy, how dare." Yeah, you're right. It's endearing, heavy breathing. If you put Lyra's breathing through a phone in the 90s, someone would think that a pervert was calling them. And yeah. Anyway. So yeah, learning that she can't read hits her harder than losing her ability to speak. Being that Dragon is the most sort of understanding and kind person in the story, she changes all the controls and outputs without being asked to be picture-based on the laptop instead of language. And then clicking through the menus, she finds Teacher's current location. Dragon's trying to ask Taylor what she's trying to do, and Taylor doesn't know how to convey it, so she takes off her mask to show Dragon her face. It's a bit of a strain even trying to convey anything like this. And she's like looking at herself from the teleporter's eyes to like get a sense of how things are going. And I guess Dragon is, I just thought of this, but Dragon is like definite proof that Taylor's not able to just control parahumans. It's like humans specifically, even though Dragon's most of the way there. She doesn't have like the actual biological crap. I mean, she is created from biological stuff, but it's kind of like how she even talks about Atlas later when thinking about her gap in understanding of his biology. I kind of think that's how Dragon is, where like she can't see Dragon just like she can't see Atlas's guts with her power. Vic says, "I think it's because Dragon's brain isn't here." Yeah, that might be it. We'll see in later chapters. We'll double confirm sort of how things get stated, and maybe it's a little ambiguous, but yeah, she finds the data not only on Teacher but also some other targets she's gonna try and grab, and she grabs the location of the birdcage as well. They seem to have like the kind of phone technology where she's bumping her phone against the laptop and it's sending the location data to the phone. I don't know how many times they really talk about it, but they do have like increased phone tech. Like this was only 2013, but I'm pretty sure all the smartphones within the worm setting could all like do this sort of bump transfer. It's another thing they just talk about a little more in Ward. Oh yes. Doing her best to apologize to the teleporter, she like takes a bow at her, and the story even takes time to note she's not doing this racistly. She doesn't think this person is Asian, but she just doesn't know how to convey her feelings aside from big gestures. She can salute at Dragon, hold her hand out towards the screen to be like, "My God, I can't read," and she can bow to say that she's sorry. This is like the best she's got. And then she's sad, thinking about how she'll have to deal with Glastigüeñe and Dragon. I will expand upon this in later chapters, but I find it interesting that when Taylor thinks through what she wants to do and who she wants to collect, a lot of the different thoughts are like, all of her priority targets are people who build up networks of powers. Like Dragon has the sort of network of dragon suits. Glastigüeñe has the shades, the shadows, whatever. And Teacher has his thralls. And then Taylor has, of course, the people she's direct controlling. But these are the people she like focuses on, are people with other like networks. Anyway, Taylor leaves by herself, flying away. I didn't write it in my notes, but like she can sense that like as soon as she can't control the teleporter anymore, the teleporter immediately spins a circle around herself and gets the hell out of there. Yeah, Taylor's flying off in the direction of the Seamerg, who's like openly tinkering. Got another quote here. The fighting was ongoing, with Leviathan more hurt than alive. Capes were fighting to get to safety rather than trying to hurt Scion. Scion hit Leviathan, and the last buildings in the settlement toppled. Yeah, I skipped over some of the little details, but Taylor's not even sure if... Well, obviously, distracting Scion with Leviathan is good to buy time, but him being there means that the entire battlefield is more difficult terrain for the gathered capes. So, you know, it's a trade-off. Then we got I passed beside the Seamerg as I flew, checking. No control. I do... This is like something they've tried a few times in the story, like Regent seeing if he could control Leviathan, Taylor seeing about like getting the Endbringers on their side, and now this like attempt to directly control the Seamerg, but it's a no-go. Which is yet more evidence that Taylor is not controlling people shard side first, but person side first. Which I guess also makes sense because she has to focus through the way that they use their power rather than just being able to tap the power itself. Anyway, yes, knowing that the Seamerg will be near Tattletale, Taylor finds the doorway to get back to her, avoids Marquis and his like defensive line, and gets to where Panacea and Bonesaw are. Once she's there, she has those two walk out of her range, because it's like obviously going to cause a huge fight for her to have Amy. And then Tattletale's worried again at Taylor returning here, even though she understands that Taylor has a plan. And she seems to know that Taylor is going to start building up forces. She tells her not to go through with it because she'll end up as public enemy number 2. But taking what she needs, Taylor grabs control of Doormaker and the Clairvoyant. Marquis counters by trapping her in a bone prison that he had set up underground. It's just like the opening of Gideon the Ninth. I wonder if Wildbow time traveled to the future, read Gideon the Ninth, and then went back to the past and then wrote this. Anyway, so rather than bothering to find a way to break the bones that are encircling her, Taylor opens a portal near Marquis and herself. Like, those are the two destinations, only a few feet from each other. And then direct controls him through the portal. She feels like she's on the wrong end of her, like, Tag murder memory, where she super wanted to kill Tag. And she's like, oh no, I'm the Tag who's going to get murdered. Lung and the boys all attack, but Taylor opens up a bunch of small portals near them, like one portal a piece, all at once. And it's pretty successful. You know, it basically works. She's able to grab all of their volition, I guess. She steals their control. And then Tattletale saying, Taylor, you're putting me in a pretty shitty spot here. I'm not getting enough details here to paint a picture. I trust the hell out of you, but I'm not sure this is you, Taylor. Controlling a bunch of capes with portals, Taylor finds, like, she's openly grabbing more people now. Taylor finds Teacher's location again on her phone. As a parting message to Tattletale, she gives her the pepper spray. She, like, opens a portal high enough above Tattletale that she won't take control of her and drops the pepper spray through it into her hands. You couldn't have made it easy. Because standing by while you do this, that's fucking hard. It's honestly easier if I'm on their side and helping them stop you. If I can blame the fuck-up job Panacea did to your head. With no response to Tattletale, Taylor opens a doorway, leaving to deal with Teacher. Oh my god. I really did my best in this chapter summary to, like, really not get bogged down in the details like I normally do. And I hope I didn't cut out too much, but I think that, like, having my summary be a half an hour instead of, like, it was probably like a full hour on the previous chapter, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm doing my best to get those summaries down, because I know when we get to Ward, it's going to be long chapters, because they start out just as long as the sort of later midsection of Worm, and continue going up from there. But yeah, I was happy with how much I was able to sort of move around. I did pull out a reasonable number of sections into the Powers, Knowledge, and World Building area. As far as final chapter thoughts, like, this one, I don't think there's a single miss in this back section. I think it's really great. I like all the, like, the way the fight plays out. I like Taylor's, like, emotionality about losing her mind. I like the way the information is presented. And by using Taylor's memory to, like, get across people's feelings, it's like so much more powerful, because if she's like telling about how Marquis sees her as, like, Tag in the Tag murder memory, then that's, like, so much more evocative than just being like, he was so mad he wanted to kill me. Like, saying that she, like, that various people felt trapped, like, these specific memories that we can recall. Like, we have a really good idea, because it's like a whole painted scene, like, recaptured in, like, a sentence or two. And we can be like, I don't know. It is just really, really efficient storytelling, and it only works because we're this deep into such a long work. like maybe you could do like a shorter work and do something like this. But I guess my whole point is there's these like massive plethora of scenes to pull different emotional tones and nuances from and be like, well, this guy felt sort of like this situation that you know deeply about from earlier in the book, and this other one felt like this second, is great. Really, really good concept to like move information. And then we've seen in the past too that this isn't like a brand new idea, because when the Seamer tried to influence Taylor and said in her voice, in her own mind, the like words on Dinah's note, then that was like a similar like memory to evoke more than simple feeling kind of thing. Yeah, this chapter rules. It's really great. I'd have a hard time ordering all these final chapters. They're all really good in different ways. But I love seeing Chevalier jump into the fray and fight. We all love it. And I think Leviathan battling again is great. Oh, Vic says, pretty stark against the last chapter. Yeah, the last chapter is all about, like, panic, and, like, it's about her, like, trying to get a hold of herself. And while she's still, like, figuring things out this chapter, she's so much more, like, resolute and so much more on the ball. And so it's interesting, too, that she is losing control of herself in some ways and more focused in others. Oh, yeah, Vic says, getting into the swing of things. Yeah, definitely. And even, it's important that she drove herself to the battle and that she, like, forced herself to start fighting right away, even before she's, like, quote-unquote prepared. Because... yeah, she could have just gotten fragged like any other person. But in Parahumans, we've seen time and time again that, like, trying to do some trick out of battle is one thing. Like, actually understanding your powers and, like, gaining mastery over them has to happen during actual conflict. That's just how the shards evolve. Like, that's when you get better and better use out of them. So... like, she's having all these, like, stumbling problems, but she's getting them out of the way. And much like, you know how Lung has to surpass a certain, like, threshold before he can survive in a fight and, like, be dangerous, but once he hits that point and the ball is rolling, he's, like, hard to stop. Well, she's trying to, like, get that Katamari rolling. She's trying to hit that initial point where she's tough enough to keep growing. And she's willing to put everything on the line to get into the fight early right now. And then she gains some control. Then she's like, okay, I've gained some control. I've gained some idea of what I want to do and who I'm willing to control. And, like, she bounces off the whole acid bath thing. And I think that really does weigh heavily on her. And that's when, all these things combine to... her being like, okay, I'm going to take teacher, and to take teacher I need Doormaker and the clairvoyant. And once she has Doormaker and realizes how incredibly powerful his power combos with her, like, at no point will she give up Doormaker after this point. They are permanently affixed together because, like, it's the best power for her power, just opening up direct connections to anyone. And, of course, the utility it always brought, like just shifting between places, closing up avenues of attacks, opening new ones. Yeah. I'll probably touch on more of the stuff I would say here in the other sections. So I'm just going to move on to... I have this under ARC stuff. I'll say the actual ARC stuff, I guess, and then I'll say the stuff I actually had copy-pasted in here. The actual ARC stuff, again, this is a great, like... not only transitioning Taylor from the start, where she's, like, fully shaky, unable to, like, use stuff, to... also including us, the reader, in transitioning us in the way we're thinking about Taylor, the way we're thinking about the fight, and the way we're seeing, like, the available possibility space. And so it gives us time to comprehend things. It gives us time to fully acclimate to the way that Taylor's sort of experiencing the world now. And we're reminded again and again how, she's as connected to other people's bodies and in better control of them than she is to her own body, which she has very limited control over. And if it weren't for the flight pack, she'd be in fucking trouble, you know? She's kind of just, like, zipping around the battlefield because she's got better bug control than body control. As far as the stuff I actually wrote down, one of these quotes that I wanted to make sure that I pulled the actual original stuff from. So I'm going to read the part from the older chapter first. It's Tangle 6.9. Nice. I shrugged. I don't want to go back. I don't want to beg and plead for help from those assholes in the school faculty just so I can return to the same position I was in a month ago. Way I see it, the bullying is unavoidable, impossible to control or prevent. It's like a force of nature, a force of human nature. It's easier to handle if I think about it like that. I can't fight it, can't win, so I'll just focus on dealing with the after effects. You don't have to give up. I'm not giving up. And then, that's a back and forth with Danny right before she leaves the house to stop living with him for good. And then the part from this chapter was, and whatever Tattletale says about being human at his core, human on the surface, or whatever else, he's a natural disaster, not an individual, a force of nature, impossible to control or prevent. Those words crossed my mind, and they were my words, but they weren't my thoughts. Reminding me of the bad old days, passenger? I thought to myself. My bugs continued to gather around me, a familiar, comfortable presence, considering everything that was happening. I'm not giving up! My voice sounding so far away, even in my own head, so young. Damn straight. Yeah, so, I will do my best to find where these quotes are from and such. She had, some obvious ones in this chapter, and, this one's a little less obvious. Although, I'm going to be honest, when she said a force of nature, impossible to control or prevent, I instantly knew that was, quotes from earlier in the book, because some of these things they say kind of just, stick in your mind. And yeah, I really like this, the complicated, conveyance of ideas from Wildbow to us, from the passenger to Taylor. If anything, we can say that Wildbow is the passenger and we're Taylor. I know. So moving on from the ARC stuff, although I will say the ARC title is more and more relevant the further we get in Speck, where she's just a speck to herself among her own swarm, and it's hard to even focus, even though she's always dead center in the swarm. But yes, the characters section. Characters that were present and named, but did not get any characterization, I didn't really put here, so I didn't put Ingenue, I didn't put Lung, or any of Marquis's guys. Oh, it's Alien. Alien Cat Daddy CGS 5904 says, do you think he's intentionally doing an homage to, a Crisis event? With the overall chapter, you'll have to be a little more specific than that. I mean, do you mean like a crisis point or anything? Like, I guess you haven't read Ward, so you're not used to them using crisis point as a term. But you know what? This overall thing it is a crisis event. This particular fight and chapter. But anyway, so yeah, for now, the character section. Chevalier, I think that it's just like, it's not so much characterization, but just the fact that he's going like beast mode still and direct fighting Scion. Like, oh, now the dog's getting loud. Back to dog heavy breathing time. Alien says, with Scion jumping dimensions and destroying them, from like Crisis on Infinite Earth in the 80s. Oh, they sure might. I don't actually have that much like comic book large scale crossover experience. I've read the comics that lead up to the Dark Phoenix in like the trade paperback that kind of combines several comic lines to have the Dark Phoenix storyline. But that's like the closest thing, and I only read that once, like several years ago, and by several I mean like 12 plus years ago. So it sure might be like a Crisis on Infinite Earth style thing, but I think it's kind of like, I think Scion is just, I think he works as a really good metaphor because he's the source of these powers that feel like they are going to fix everything, and he gives these people like the seeds of their own destruction. And while they are able to work together against him, like he's like the concept of a corrupting force and of like the concept of power to me. I mean, he kind of represents a lot of things, but I actually want to get my thoughts together better on this. I want to have like one episode after we're done with the series to talk through stuff like Scion and sort of how he holds the story together. Scion is simultaneously like the main bad guy and the framework for the entire story. This individual arc might be like maybe some of the ways that like the team ups play out or something, like does end up being a lot more like a crossover event from old comics, but in general I think of Scion like different from most antagonists. Like when Bizarro fights Superman, Bizarro's just a bad guy. He's a character who might represent like a concept or a mindset, but he's not like the framework of the story in the way that Scion is, where Scion kind of creates the whole basis for everything. Man, Scion's pretty cool as like a story conceit. Yes. Anyway, back to Chevalier. It's great to see him in the thick of things. You love to see him blocking beams with his sword. Everybody wants to block a beam with a sword. I can tell you that. Even if they think they don't want to, or they try to convince you they don't want to block a beam, you better believe they do. Acid Bath. Acid Bath is like so off-putting that it makes Taylor go like, ugh, I need to do anything that's possible to avoid being this guy. And like he's characterized through his backstory and like a really, like, he just sounds like the worst. We've seen like other backstories of people like from the Birdcage, like Gavel. And Gavel, while he may have been unethical, he didn't seem like out and out evil like Acid Bath. he was like kind of under a twisted sense of justice, like a Taylor analog rather than Acid Bath, who's like a Jack analog. I don't think Acid Bath is as bad as Jack, but that's like, I don't know. That's like saying, yeah, he's a 9 out of 10, not a 10 out of 10. So, not a big deal that he's not as bad as Jack. Amy and Riley, when they get controlled, it's just very brief, but we get, they passed out of my range. Marquis draped an arm around his daughter's shoulders, hugging her closer. Bonesaw wheeled on me. There was a fury in her eyes. So, yeah, you get that a lot of these capes are just like, they just hate being controlled. Like, some find it traumatic, some like Marquis, or like Bonesaw, or like some of the capes she had controlled earlier in the fight. They just like want to do anything they can to like get vengeance for being controlled or for their loss of agency or whatever. They need that retribution. Speaking of Marquis, he's up next. He wants to stop Taylor. He's planning. He did some prep work, but it doesn't matter because she's getting abstract with her attacks, using Doormaker to like just shortcut her way to controlling people. Marquis has that dog in him. When he's controlled, he's like, I am going to tag you, and you are going to be nothing. Let's see here. Then we got Dragon. Dragon's so sweet to Taylor. She's so nice. She still is Taylor's mom, and it is so tragic that Taylor's like, I know I really like Dragon, but I'm gonna have to destroy her. Oh, I didn't write down Glastigwenye. I certainly should, and I am doing so now. Glastigwenye is like, I relate to you, girl. Like, there's no one else like us. We gotta team up as twinsies, and we've gotta fight Scion together. One last battle. It's gonna be sick. And, we get the impression that as distraught in some ways as Glastigwenye might be for the lack of continuance of the cycle, she also thinks this is fine. This is pretty cool. This whole battle thing. We shall talk about her more when she comes back later in other chapters. Tattletale, we have Tattletale's like, she's still backing Taylor up. She pre-calls Dragon to be like, hey, give her whatever she needs. She's gonna look like a weird creep, but don't make fun of her. And then, Tattletale, I think, would be willing to work against the interests of many other people to help, Taylor. She's like convincing herself, I should just stop working with you. I should be against you now. But then she doesn't do that thing. Alien says, would have loved to see this arc from other characters' perspectives. Yeah, definitely. Would be interesting. I'm not sure. I think the best way to do that would probably be like an Arc 9 style thing where every chapter you're watching is from a different character perspective so that it can follow Taylor without being super inorganic. Yes, so any last Tattletale thoughts? I don't know. It's all very sad. I am in the camp that perpetually thinks that the Taylor-Lisa connection was more meaningful than the Taylor-Rachel connection, despite all the difficulties in getting the Rachel one to work. And how, like, on the surface, sweet it is, etc. Then, you know, moving to her counterpart, Taylor. Listen, Tattletale's the thinker, and Taylor's the warrior. It's as simple as that. Taylor has, like, goes through so much in this chapter. She's, like, going through all this turmoil and realizing all these, you know, problems, and she keeps, like, getting herself back on track, and just, I don't know. She's so, like, persistent, and obviously, like, this is her villain turn or whatever to a lot of people, and who think that this makes her, like, oh, she's clearly, like, undeniably evil. I can't believe she just insisted on taking things into her own hands and whatever. But, you know, I don't give a shit about that. Taylor, she's our girl, and she's gonna get the job done. She's gonna do the damn thing. And she still, even in this moment, is not as evil as, like, a baseline to me as, like, more evilly motivated characters like Acid Bath, because if he had the power to do what Taylor's doing, he would do it, but eviler. I think it's always worth taking into account, like, what someone with a different mindset would do in the same position, because it's like, Taylor is kind of like Dragon in that, like, I think the things Dragon does with mass surveillance are obviously bad, and, like, outside of a story, you know, you wouldn't want it to happen. But given that this is, like, a thing where we know specific, like, truths about this world, we know that, like, Dragon is essentially one of the most moral parahumans overall, and that, like, Taylor and Dragon, each with their own, like, dangerous, outsized power, are coming at things from a position and standpoint where they want to do best for people. So, like, as, air quotes, evil as their actions may be at some points, I think that I'm in line with them anyway. Vic says, and yet I trust Dragon with everything. Exactly. It's just like, with the power of the story and truly knowing, like, being able to see the character's perspective, you can give people the kind of benefit of the doubt that you can't necessarily do in, like, a real life power situation, because in terms of real life stuff, a lot of times it doesn't matter what's in someone's heart, etc., or, like, you can't tell even if they say one thing. But in this, a book, we can actually understand characters' motivations directly. So, you know, we can feel a little bit different. It's like how in Deep Space Nine, I can look for the Garrick and Damar redemption, even though in real life I'd be like, put him in the guillotine! But, Taylor, you're our girl. You're the greatest of all of us. Moving on from the power section to the, from the character section to the power section. Alien says that from Star Wars. Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Damar and Garrick are two of the characters from the Nazi analog faction. I think we can all be adults and say that the Cardassians represent the Nazis. That's what the writers clearly had in mind while they were creating that government and the people who had grown up in that society. You know, right down to having people who were, like, anti-government dissenters who had to, like, escape the secret police and stuff. But Damar at one point is quite high up in the Cardassian military structure, and despite a long, multiple seasons like thing of him kind of being like an antagonist character, a like fairly evil character who's even seen in like sort of sideways. They like use the same actors to do kind of like a Vision kind of thing, and even in that where like you're kind of seeing things totally outside of the normal perspective, he plays like a villain. So despite all of Damar's villainous origins and bad things he's done in the past, and the fact that he's like killed a character that probably, I mean, I'm not gonna say every audience like falls for all the like character development and like really latches onto the characters, but he kills someone that I certainly liked and probably many audience members liked, and he fucking shoots her right on screen. And you know, he's like a bad dude, but at the end he helps them win the war and stop some even badder dudes. And he kind of gets a redemption. Like, people think he's an okay guy by the end, but it's like a Darth Vader redemption where he's dead. That's right. Tons of Star Trek Deep Space Nine spoilers, but you should also watch that show because it's pretty good. Alien says, the most I've ever listened to talk about Star Trek in my entire life. Like, legitimately, if you were just to watch one series only of Star Trek, or like watch like, I don't know, a suite of like 12 episodes, I would very much say watch Deep Space Nine. It hits so much harder than any of the other series when it's doing good. It's like the progenitor to like the fact like serialized television being like a normal thing and it not all being episodic. Anyway, I'm not gonna get like super down the rabbit hole, but it is by far the best of them series. Oh wait, Alien says not true. Like correction, basically to previous statement. I've watched 2 episodes of Lower Decks. Well, Lower Decks is pretty good, and it might not vibe with you if you're not already into Star Trek. So I'm not necessarily gonna say watch Lower Decks unless you're already like a Star Trek lover, but Deep Space Nine, anyone who's like kind of up for a slow political thing, and then, you know, pretty good characters, good show. Oh yes, I have a lot of quotes here in the Powers, Knowledge, and World Building section that I want to go through. Just because they're like cool, and I didn't feel like I should stop every 5 seconds in my summary to hit all these beats. But Chevalier and Ingenue, the other birdcage leaders, and other teams were trying to gather into a defending force. Issue was, there wasn't really a way to defend. Scion held the keys to all things power-related, and any attack that didn't penetrate a particular defense... any attack... Oh, weird. That didn't penetrate a particular defense needed only to be tweaked, adjusted with a moment's thought. Following that, it passed through force fields, armor, and time distortions like they weren't there. Yeah, so he's blasting. The same was true in terms of our ability to attack. I had the sense of Scion's scale because I'd seen his partner, and I'd gotten a glimpse of the sheer mass of the partner from how much had flowed through into our world as Scion had moved it. I could assume that they were roughly equivalent in size, and that meant we were trying to tear through landmass of raw matter, and we were doing it a few handfuls at a time. I could look at how durable the partner entity's flesh had been when Rachel and Lung had been tearing through it, extrapolate to the attacks we'd seen here. We weren't doing nearly enough, especially if he was compartmentalizing the damage and keeping himself from losing more than a certain amount at a time. To top it all off, anything we found that worked only worked for a short time. Either the user died or Scion adapted his defenses to become immune to it. My brain had like a skip or something when I was reading the first paragraph of that where I like thought that I was going to be reading the part where he was tweaking his own defenses instead of tweaking his attacks. Anyway, but yeah, I think it's good sometimes to reaffirm the like difficulty of fighting Scion. And then this is her like realizing and coordinating some of the people she's got. 2 Shaker classification capes provided the majority of the offensive power. If I let them be, if I let things move on autopilot in their own way, then they use their power well enough. A telekinetic with an emphasis on small objects, with a storm of ball bearings and small stones from the road, and a cape that could create superheated shafts of energy, anchoring them between 2 objects. The memories were of my bugs attacking as a coordinated whole, of the threads I'd extended as tripwires, and my attacks on Echidna. Yeah, I'm just thinking of, like, the coolest attack ever, where someone's, like, firing an uneven flak cannon of, like, ball bearings and stones, and, like, randomly between, like, as many as possible, there's all these, like, like, crazy, superheated, like, lasers, and they're laser cutting through them, and just like, this awful firing solution you do not want to go through. So yeah, like very, very cool powers, very evocative. Wildbow's still going ham with doing combos and stuff. In fact, I would say that the rest of the time, combos will become like the main thing. Scion threw the Alexandria package cape I couldn't name into the ceramic shard guy, and he managed to break the cape's fall, falling to pieces in the process. He began picking himself up, gathering more pieces of glass from nearby rubble to make himself bigger than before. I do find it funny that one of the most durable and hardy capes in this fight is basically mush, but tough. Scion had stopped with the beams and the blasts. He was throwing punches again, hurling himself into the thickest parts of the crowd. Nilbog's creations were taking the brunt of the attack. Yeah, I love the, how Scion's, altering through different attacks. He keeps going through, cycling, trying to, find something that is cathartic, but nothing's working. Then we got some Glass de Guenier quotes here. We got, but the fairy are creatures of whimsy, aren't they? Easily influenced by the masks they wear. It's the whole point of them, isn't it, Administrator? It's why they are, yes? And then a little later in the conversation, she says, fortuitous arrival. Not very likely. They litter breadcrumbs in their wake, not to be followed, but so their kin don't waste time and effort traveling the same paths. For another to arrive here, they would need to avoid touching a single crumb, like you or me swimming the length of a river without touching a wave. Glass de Guenier offered a small laugh. I cling to a sliver of hope, and I know I'm fooling myself. There really isn't much of a time window. A few thousand years is such a short time, you know. And I really like this because knowing about the breadcrumbs and not having a good way to fully convey that information to the main characters, because you can have trigger events show them some things, but having someone in the know like Glass de Guenier tell them some information is really useful, and gets a lot of the knowledge to the humans. But I say all this to say that the reason I like the breadcrumbs is because we learn in the chapter, the most recent interlude, that the most progress that these creatures have made toward their goal of stopping the entropy heat death of the universe was made when Eden and Abaddon exchange information. So, and she even thinks to herself, if we got this much info on cycles regularly, we would be all but assured of our victory, of like our success. But instead, they still double down, like they don't reconsider. They still double down on a plan to like torture, murder the Earth and its inhabitants, and then like extract the data from them. Even though she's learning that they may already have like huge stores of data from other like entities. If they were to reconvene and share their knowledge, they might be able to like have success at what they want. But instead, each of them is, despite being in pairs or trios, essentially like individualistically going about this, trying to solve it without coalescing knowledge and stuff. And it's just so clear from the way that this story frames things, from so many little things like the breadcrumbs, from things like people not working together well, from people just needing information but the CMERG blocks it, like all these little things that it's like communication, cooperation, like the sharing of ideas, like all these things are so much more important, and the only way to overcome the the inevitable death caused by the entity, which on a micro scale, the entity itself represents, like the inevitability of it winning, represents the like overall universe's inevitability of like heat death. And so, in a way, the like proof is in the pudding of the humans stopping the entities feels like a step in the direction of maybe we could like solve these problems, and like I don't know, it all just feels like different like layers of circles where it's like different scale of the same problem kind of. We see that, you know, when Taylor's on her adventures, like Brockton Bay is like a microcosm of the Cape world at large, and then like the Capes fighting the Endbringers is like a small scale version of all the Capes and the Endbringers fighting against Scion. Yeah, it all kind of fits together neatly. Boop boop boop. But the next thing I wanted to pull out, we don't get like that much information for Black Kaze, and whenever she comes up, it sort of slips from my mind. But this is perhaps all we get. Black Kaze had entered the battlefield, backed up by dragon's teeth. She disappeared and then reappeared behind Scion, katana drawn. A moment passed, and Scion reacted as though he'd been punched, dead center in the chest. Not a big reaction, but it was a reaction. Black Kaze altered attacks with Acid Bath, very proper, measured in her movements, compared to Acid Bath's flailing, reckless, hurried scramble to keep out of Scion's line of sight. Acid Bath moved with surprising quickness, faster than a typical car might, a peculiarity of his breaker power. And then, this is after there had been a clash between Leviathan and Scion that had knocked everybody over and like knocked down buildings, and the Scion's arrival had brought like essentially like a coating of water to the battlefield, I think. So this was Capes practically fought one another to get their footing and get away, Capes practically fought one another to get their footing and get out of the way. Some were too rough in their hurry to get by Nilbog's creations, only to get attacked by the things in retaliation. I clenched my one fist. She's like, I can't believe they're not working together. And then this isn't a quote. This is my my random typed out thought from before I wrote any of the rest of the doc. Taylor snagged Doormaker and the Clairvoyant. Now she can go wherever she wants. You can't give Taylor that much freedom. If she can do whatever she wants, she's just gonna fuck up everything. Anyway, I feel like I could go on and on and on and on about things forever, but I don't have any more stuff written out, and I feel like my most coherent random thought has already dropped when I thought about like the humans fighting Scion as a micro version of the entities fighting, entropy. We're going to go to the audience participation section. For this chapter, the question was, are there any capes you think would be a direct detriment to fighting Scion? And Vic said capes with less targeted control, especially emotion powers. I can't really think of an example. For me, I would think of capes like in Ward Solar Stare. She can't shoot her power without having like a blinding flare residual afterward, which would not affect Scion, but would affect the vast majority of the capes fighting Scion. So Solar Stare would be a bad power. It would be hard to use a lot of capes like Sundancer, as good as her power is, without the coordination of like without peak Taylor style coordination. Using Sundancer's power is liable to just like fry a bunch of capes, which is like what Sundancer's worried about in the first portion of the story to begin with. She's like, I can't use my power, it's too powerful. Trying to think of other people who would be bad to bring. I feel like there are capes who are too chaotic and uncaring about the use of their power, like Bakuda, who would not like bother to not hit people, but I guess I consider that kind of different than powers that would be a detriment. Yeah, I don't know. There aren't that many that I can't think of a use for at all in the fight. But because even a lot of emotion controlling powers, like let's say you had Heartbreaker here, if it was Heartbreaker but doing anything he could for victory instead of being evil, Heartbreaker could like fill everyone with like measured but intense fighting spirit and have them all like hardened and resilient emotionally, ready to deal with the like things that are incoming. So like even that thing in terms of like collaborative work would be a potential positive. Who else would not be good? I don't know. There are people who are like just too messy to join the fight. Like, again, without having a way to section off other capes from like the Ash Beast, it would be too chaotic and too destructive to bring to the table. It would just probably kill way more capes than actually hurt Scion too much. As with many questions, though, that's all we got for the answers, and I think we can let it rest there. If anybody else wants to answer it in the future, feel free to leave some comments. It would be lovely if that were how it were. And you know what? I hadn't thought of a question, but I thought of one just now. If you could use Doormaker's power to jump around an abandoned Earth, where would you go and what would you want? What places would you want to? No, I guess where would you go is already like that. We'll just say, what places would you want to visit? Easy peasy. Alright, posting that in the Discord, and I'm just going to start the sort of the outro to this whole thing. Given how short the speed draws are for this section of the story, we're going to see that speed draw. All right. The song you're hearing, the song for the last portion of the story, is Speck by ScarlettXOX. You can find her work at twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. That link will be in the stream description for all the episodes with one of her songs. Our Discord server can be found at... The link can be found in the stream description and the channel description, as well as the other links here. We've got the author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com, and there is also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work, 2 forms, one at audioworm.rain-online.org and the other at abaddonproductions.org. I'm going to let the rest of the song play out. Greg says cheers for the stream. Cheers to you as well, Greg. And I'll see you on the next chapter.